So let's talk about networking with Windows 10 and file and print sharing with Windows 10. We're going to be doing the lecture located on the second topic of lesson 4. And let's get started. So we can talk about different ways to share with Windows 10. First, we should talk about network models uh, as my virtual machine boots up. So first of all, let's talk about peer-to-peer versus client-server network models. So a peer-to-peer peer-to-peer network model essentially says that no workstation is more valid, or the credentials in a workstation are more valid than any other workstation. So there's strengths to that. There's no single point of failure. However, the weaknesses outweigh the strengths, because what will happen is essentially it becomes incredibly difficult to manage. Microsoft, of course, you have to take this with a grain of salt because Microsoft sells Active Directory, would often recommend that you go to Active Directory if you have 10 or more clients on the network. It does really become difficult. It becomes tedious to manage all those different credentials on all those different islands, right? So case in point, say we have a share that's on a laptop somewhere, and we want a user to be able to, a different user, an external user, want to log on to that share. Well, we're going to either have to create a user on that on the local machine that's offering that share, or we're going to have to create a generic account, which we certainly don't want to do. All right. So if we create an account for that user, the whole reason why we create accounts, as we were talking about earlier with security authentication, is we want to record what user is doing what, and it's a key component of security to have authentication, to know which user is doing what, and to write it down, accounting, and to authorize users based off who they are. So if I have a shared account, that's useless. Furthermore, if I have an account that I create for another user, I have a couple options. I can have them walk over and type in a password for their user, or I can create the password myself. But again, if I created the password myself, I can still log in as that user and do whatever I want to the file and then blame that user. It's a bit of a mess. In order for peer-to-peer work, you need to have highly competent workers who or users who are willing, who are trustworthy. Okay, not the best scenario. Client server, on the other hand, you have credentials that are kept on a central server. So what will happen is the central server, and since we're talking about Microsoft, we'll talk about we can talk about Active Directory. Active Directory will provide a central database. That central database will store credentials in its SAM database. And then when any workstation that joins that database, joins that Active Directory network, logs in with any credentials that are valid on the central server, those local credentials will get cached. Up to 10. On Windows 10, we have 10 logins can be cached. A couple points here. First of all, if you are borrowing a computer or using a computer that's on an Active Directory network and you've never logged on to it, you need to log on to it before you can take it away from the Active Directory network, because if it can't get to that central server, it won't be able to cache the credentials. Again, the server's credentials will always win. The server's credentials are the key credentials. It's a central security database of credentials. This makes administration much easier, certainly to create accounts, to reset passwords, to remove or disable accounts, to create shares, to create printers, especially if you're going off the printer or off the server. You have the printer off the server, or you have the shares off the server. We can control much better who's connecting, and I never, as the administrator, need to know the password because I have my user set their own password, right? So Microsoft File and Print Sharing. Let's talk about the infrastructure. It's going to use a protocol called SMB. The folks in Linux like to call it Samba. It's short for Server Messenger Block. It also uses something called Common Internet File System. It works hand in hand with SMB. All right. And it also works with what we call NetBIOS, which is Network Basic Input Output System. All this stuff is kind of cooked together. They've been used together as different protocols for so long, especially in the realm of Microsoft, that they're often considered all one and the same. So let me bring up I'm logging into my server now. I'm sorry, into my virtual machine. Here it is. All right, so now that I'm in my desktop, let's talk about the network infrastructure, and let's talk about network settings. We'll kind of combine all this into one. All right, so Microsoft nowadays would much prefer, let's make this resolution change. Microsoft would more nowadays prefer you use settings, so much so that you can just go through settings here, click on the little settings and click on network, and down here, where is it? Network and internet. I missed it. There you go. Much rather have you go through these settings right here. Here's my Ethernet card because I'm on my virtual machine. It's Ethernet. It's not wireless. However, here's my IP address. Right. It's kind of they've been setting this thing up, these settings, to be the primary thing. This is the network profiles, which we talked about last lecture. That being said, Network and Sharing Center, which is the old control panel, there it is in control panel, window, is still quite powerful. You click on Ethernet 0 here and click on Properties. Now this is the protocol stack. As you can see, I have my network card listed right here, and then we have the various protocols that are running in Windows. This stack hasn't changed all that much since Windows 3.1 days, to be honest. So this client for networks, file and print sharing, and then, well, we'll talk about LLDP a little bit later. These two right here are the actual settings that allow Microsoft to utilize file and print sharing. So they have to be enabled, all right? The other thing we need to understand here is, again, we talked about this last class, is TCP/IP, which we talked about last class. So these are the two things that you need turned on for SMB or file shares to work. All right. LLDP is going to be necessary if you want to automatically find those shares. So SMB or CISF, if it runs on top of NetBIOS. NetBIOS is an old network protocol that's really only supposed to work on layer 2 within the local LAN. But we've kind of fudged it over the years, got it working at layer 3. So TCP 139 NetBIOS sessions, UDP 135 NetBIOS name resolution, UDP 138, which is NetBIOS datagram. So you need 139 to 138 enabled with TCP 139 and UDP 137, 138. Often network administrators simply turn TCP and UDP 139 to 138 turned on, and TCP 445, which is actually what allows the SMB or the CISF share to go through. All right, so those are the network settings. And for folks that aren't taking networks, excuse all those port numbers. I'm not gonna. These are the numbers that are used to connect up to a machine. Also, we have UNC. So when you connect up to a share, you need a UNC, which is Universal Naming Convention. Server share subfolder. So case in point, let me go back to my virtual machine, and we go look at the share that we set up in the lab, that we're going to set up in the lab, which I believe is in our mirror drive. That's encrypted. That's what that means. So here's my share right here. Let's do, I'm trying to remember which ones are set up and which ones are not. I'm always playing with the labs. Sharing is set up right here where it says network path. Here's the UNC. My computer name is jja-win10edu-v. And then the pub share is actually the name of my share, right? So that goes back to this format, right? / the server name / the share name. If I had a subfolder in that share, I could directly go to that subfolder or file. Sometimes applications want to go directly to a file by listing out subfolders and putting a file at the end. All right, so I can go directly to a file. All right, again, that server name is going to be in the net BIOS. You can also put an IP address that is legitimate, so you just put an IP address instead of the net BIOS name. Remember, the net BIOS name is essentially going to be your host name. So if you go to PowerShell and you type host name, or DOS for that matter, you'll see what your net BIOS name is. It's going to be the same as your net BIOS name is going to be the same as your computer name, host name, whatever you want to call it. Let's talk about network discovery, LLDP, link layer discovery protocol. In order for this to work, in order for other people to see your shares, you're going to need to be a private network. You need to set your network to be a private network because it's got to allow certain holes in the firewall so people can see your shares. And some of these holes up here. So LLDP, what it does is it goes out, and that good old-fashioned, well, it used to be called Network Neighborhood. Now I think it's just called Network. There it is. If I click on that, that's what's going to scan around. Right now, I'm not advertising my machine. If I was, it would pop up in here. Actually, it is popping up because I'm a public network. So I only see my machine. That's the only machine I see in there. If I double click on it, here's all my shares that I'm offering. Okay. If I had LLDP turned on to multiple workstations on this LAN, I would automatically see their shares, and hopefully they're locked down and not allowing everyone in the world to get access to it. So LLDP is responsible for automatically discovering the shares. All right. Again, to enable shares, you can go into Control Panel, Network and Internet, Network and Sharing Center, Advanced Sharing Settings. So let me hit Cancel here. Let me hit Close here. Those have to be turned on, and you can click on New Advanced Sharing Settings. This is where I would turn Network Discovery on and off. Currently, I'm in the private. Right. If I go into Guest or Public, I can turn on network discovery as well. This is for me to actively go out, right? To go out and actively discover other shares. All right, so let's talk about share permissions. So they're much more simplified. There's only full control, which allows you to change permissions. That should be charged. That should be changed. That's a little typo. Excuse me. I'll fix it right here. Change. Where it'll allow you to cheat and change the data on the file or the folder name, and read, which will allow you to read it. You can either be allowed or denied, okay? Think of it as a second shield, right? This is what gets confusing, right? We have NTFS permissions, which is the lower shield, right? So NTFS, remember, had more complicated permissions, as we probably learned from the lab, that will either allow or deny us to do a number of things. And then there's going to be a share on top of it. Okay, so you could put groups or users in to either in the share permissions, obviously the NTFS permissions. But what's going to happen is when that user or group tries to get into the share, let's say they're allowed, right, to read. They're allowed to read, but they're denied to write. What's going to happen is that's going to get allowed through with only read permissions. Even if the NTFS permission allows them to write and read and everything else, this shield won't allow them to write. So they're going to need those permissions on both shields. All right, that's the best way to look at it. All right, again, we prefer you using a group if you're going to do permissions. It just makes life easier in the long run. The way you can change that is you can go into File Explorer, go in the Sharing tab, Advanced Sharing. So here's a couple different ways we can share folders, right? Let's create a new folder in here. Whoops. I'm going to go back into my mirror drive, and we had our share. Let's create a new one called folder. We'll do test share. All right. So I got this test share. How do I want to share it? Well, I got a couple options. No matter what, File Explorer is probably the best way. I'm going to click on Properties. I'm going to click on Sharing. I can just click the Share button. If I click the Share button, it's going to ask me who do I want to give privileges to. Let me do everyone. right? Everyone would be a group that all users are in. And I can then say I want to read write, I want to read, what am I going to give it? So we'll say everyone has read access, so that's all the users. There's not an everyone user or a group. This is a group that has all my users in it, right? Called everyone. All right. I could also just do users, right? That would have that's another group that has users, right? I could do administrators, right? Administrators, and we'll give them read and write. Whatever I have here, and then I become particularly useless, but well, I'm the owner, so I get full permissions. Okay. When I click share, it's going to assign it a share name automatically, which will be pretty much the name of the folder, and that would be the share that it creates. Another way you can do it, you can click advanced sharing, and you click share this folder. You can change what you want the share name to be. So test share, I think. Oh, did I? Oh yeah, there's this funky issue. So if I change the name of the share that I want, so we'll call it super share, and make a joke out of it. Sure, super share, and we hit apply. Now it's going to be called super share. I can go in and change permissions. Right now, everyone has read. That's the default. Why don't we move everyone? We're going to add administrators, and we'll give them full control. Apply. Let's add users have the ability to read. So users will have the ability to read. That's fantastic. We'll hit apply. And now if I hit apply on that, I hit OK, you're going to notice the name of my share is going to be called super share. So when people connect up to it, it's going to be super share. All right, so that's a different way to do it. There's also another way called home groups, enabling home groups. Home groups is for mom and pop or grandma and grandpa or whoever at home to allow sharing. It's going to share certain folders in your directory. Pretty much all users is going to get shared out to everyone automatically. It's going to turn those shares on. So you would turn on home groups using the advanced share and the sharing center. So again, home groups are not for technical. It's not for office. You get no control. Everyone's going to have read-write access. There's very little security on it, so not a good idea. Okay. We also have PowerShell, which we'll do in the lab. PowerShell, you type new Samba share, you give it the name, and it'll do. You can also use get Samba share, which will show you all your shares. Since I have PowerShell up, if I do get SMB, I keep saying Samba, I apologize for that. SMB share, keep going, I'm tabbing through. Not the sessions, gets SMB share. It's going to show me all my shares on my computer. This brings up a good point. Notice all the extra shares in here with the dollar signs. Windows by default has shares at the root of C. Those dollar signs make it a hidden share, particularly to the link layer discovery protocol, LLDP, okay? Notice the C drive and all that's not in here. My super share is, yay. But my C dollars, my root to my C. This is for administrators only. Only administrators can get into that share. It's not going to be listed anywhere. It's kind of top secret, but it's been around forever and since all the early. You notice it's saying it's not shared. It's a built-in back channel into the hard drive. Again, administrators have access to it, so keep that in mind about making a user an administrator. Here's another one that gets you into C Windows, the admin dollar sign. That's a share to get you into admin. These are all old school backdoors dating back again to Windows 3.1 or even earlier that allow you to get in. All right, but because they have a dollar sign at the end, it makes them a hidden share, which means, by the way, you can do the same thing. You can create a hidden share with a dollar sign. So again, if I go to advanced sharing, let's go to super share and turn off sharing. I'll just turn it off right there. Now I'm not sharing it. Let's share it again. This time I'm going to call it test share dollar sign. I'm going to hit apply. Well, we'll just permissions. We'll give everyone full control, but it'll be secret. Bad move. It's not that secret, by the way. There are utilities to scan those. So there I am. I have a test share with a $sign. I hit close. If I go to get Samba share, I'm going to see test share, and then I'll go over to, I don't know if I have to refresh the cache. I'm doing this kind of on the fly. If I click on this and click on here, notice it's not listed anymore. Okay, so it's quote unquote hidden. Again, that's not really good security. It's not great security. That's what passed for security back in the 90s, but that's why in the 90s we had malware everywhere. All right, we got a little off the rails there. So let's get back to the presentation. Home groups, again, home groups is something you can do to turn on. You turn it on. Thank you. Can I go away, go away, go away. Can I move this? No, of course not. Huh. Right. I'm trying to move this thing. I have no notes here. All right, good. All right. So, all right. This thing will not go away. What if I hit exit? It's going to dump out of that. All right. All right. So, home groups, I guess they don't want my, I shouldn't go this far down. Home groups are going to be something you can turn on. Again, it's not very secure. It's not meant for technicians to use. It's meant for grandma and grandpa to use at home. You go in computer management, system tools, shared folders to view any shared folders you have. So instead of using PowerShell, you can go into computer management, and then under computer management, there's going to be a shares folder right there, shared folders. That's going to show you, that could show you all your shares right there. Again, they'll show you the $signs too. They'll show you the hidden shares there. All right, that's help you manage them. So share permissions. This is normally where I go on a little bit of a rant about how we can have read and write access. So let's just say we have Group A has access to Share Alpha. They have read and write access. Share Alpha is going to be folder 1 up here, and over here we're going to have Group A is going to have just read access, right? Sorry, just read access. I got to stop saying right when I'm talking about permissions. Just read access to folder 1. So if user 1 becomes a member of Group A, what's going to happen is they're going to have through share, and they connect up through Share Alpha, so they'd have to go / whatever the computer name is, right? / Share Alpha. However, we're going to share it. Can't have a space, so we'll just call it Share A, SSA, right? And then whatever the folder we're going to, folder 1, right? Well, actually, the share would go right to this. So let's say we're going to folder 1B. Because, by the way, if I go to this share, I'd end up in that folder, okay? So that's why that would be wrong if I put folder 1. But if I put folder 1B, I'm going to end up right in here in this subfolder, okay? Now, so if I went to open up file 1B1, I would be able to read it because I have read permissions on NTFS. NTFS gives my Group A read permissions to file 1B. However, the share permissions only give me write access. NTFS would block me from making any changes to that file. All right. If over here, let's just say Group B has read write, and they also have, for whatever reason, read write over to the folder A, and I became a member of Group B all of a sudden. Those, again, remember, NTFS permissions are cumulative, and therefore I would have read and write access to file 1B. All right, I would inherit it. So that'd be inheritance through NTFS. All right, so again, share permissions can get a little tricky, as you can see here. And remember, it's like a dual shield. It's two layers of security that you then have to worry about. All right, that's all I have to really say about shares. The lab itself, which we're going to create a couple shares with Windows 10. We're going to create them in different ways. Hopefully, after doing it hands-on, it'll make a little bit more sense. All right, I'll talk to you later.